Chosen one. Something happened that not even the shadows could foresee. An impostor took your form, wore your skin as a disguise, replicated your gestures, and attempted to speak with your voice, believing he could deceive those who know your presence. He moved among them as if destiny were within his grasp, as if he could usurp the essence that was shaped for you since the beginning of time. But what he never understood is that there are things that cannot be copied, truths that cannot be forged, an invisible weight that belongs only to those who truly carry the calling. When the moment came and he stood before those he intended to deceive, expecting submission, the unexpected happened. They did not bow to the illusion, but to the truth. And that truth was you. If this message has found you now, it is no coincidence. The world has always tried to confuse the chosen ones, dilute their identity, steal what belongs to them, but there is something that can never be taken. The energetic signature that distinguishes you, the presence that precedes your arrival, the invisible force that needs no announcement, because it is felt even before your shadow touches the ground. The impostor believed he could walk in your place, not understanding that it is not just about the image projected in the physical world, but the vibration that resonates far beyond flesh and bone. He thought he could deceive the eyes, but he failed to realize that truth is not recognized by sight. It is felt, lived, and etched into the souls of those destined to recognize you. Now, understand the depth of what this means. You never needed to prove who you are. You never needed to fight for your presence to be acknowledged, because what you carry speaks for itself, regardless of words. The impostor fell not because he was exposed by evidence, but because lies always crumble under the weight of truth. He tried to sustain an identity that did not belong to him, not realizing that destiny cannot be falsified. And as he crumbled, under the weight of what he tried to steal, those he sought to deceive felt what their eyes could not see. They did not need to question, hesitate, or doubt. They simply knew, recognized, and turned to the only presence that truly carried the mark of the chosen one. But before I continue, I have a special request. Please leave your like and subscribe to the channel right now. Also, leave the number 777 in the comments to declare to the universe that your intuition and connection with the divine will make you stronger to put an end to those who weaken you. The identity of a chosen one is not sustained on the surface. It does not reside in appearance or in the way words are organized by the one who utters them. There is an invisible weight, a spiritual signature that precedes your arrival and asserts itself even before your voice echoes in the space. The impostor, in his arrogance, believed he could take this presence for himself, not understanding that there are things that cannot be taught, absorbed, or copied. He tried to wear what can only be carried by those who were shaped for it. But what is true carries its own magnetism, and the world around him felt the discrepancy. The impostor had assumed your form, but he could not bear the vibration that accompanied that burden. Even without conscious understanding, the souls who witnessed that attempt at usurpation were touched by a subtle unease, a sense of misalignment, a silent premonition that something was out of place. Eyes can be deceived, but the spirit never errs. There is a kind of recognition that transcends logic and reason, a call that echoes in the depths of those who are awake enough to perceive it. No matter how much he tried to replicate every nuance of your posture, every inflection of your voice, every detail of your behavior, the impostor carried a void that made itself felt. And one by one, those he sought to deceive realized, not by a visible clue, but by the absence of what truly mattered. The farce began to crumble when the impostor realized that, despite the external resemblance, he did not evoke the same response in those around him. Genuine respect cannot be forced, reverence cannot be demanded, and the presence of a chosen one asserts itself effortlessly. He tried to appropriate something he did not understand, but truth has a peculiar way of revealing itself. It asserts itself through the absence of what is false. The unease became certainty, and the certainty became a natural and inevitable movement. Without the need for a single confrontation, without the need to prove anything, the illusion began to crack. It was in that moment that the unexpected happened. The impostor, who expected recognition and submission, saw gazes turn towards something beyond his mask. There was a shift in the collective perception, a moment of clarity where everything fell into place. Those he tried to deceive did not bow to him. They did not hesitate in doubt. They simply knew. And as if responding to an invisible command, they inclined their heads not to the copy, but to the presence that, even without being physically there, was felt as an undeniable truth. The impostor realized, too late, that it was not he who had deceived others. He had deceived himself. He thought he could occupy a place that did not belong to him, not considering that true belonging is not imposed by force, but by the natural recognition that comes from something far greater than the visible. He tried to take your identity, but identity is not something that can be stolen. It is something that is carried. The world is full of imitators, those who observe from a distance and try to replicate what they do not understand, believing they can take for themselves the greatness that belongs to another. But there is something that can never be transferred, learned or faked, the calling that resonates beyond flesh, beyond words, beyond any attempt at manipulation. The impostor believed he could carry this burden simply by assuming the form, but he did not realize that the true identity of a chosen one is not in appearance, but in what the presence conveys. There is a unique energy, a signature inscribed in the universe like a seal that can never be rewritten. Those who try to usurp this destiny always meet the same end: the inevitable exposure of what was never truly there. The identity of a chosen one cannot be reduced to mechanical gestures or the reproduction of rehearsed behavior. The impostor discovered this in the worst possible way, feeling in the moment the farce unraveled, the weight of a truth that could no longer be denied. He tried to carry a crown that was not shaped for his head, tried to walk a path that did not recognize his steps, tried to be what only one can be. But destiny does not bend to the will of an impostor. The essence of a chosen one is not something you wear, it is something you are. And when the moment came, the impostor felt the gaze of those around him become uncomfortable mirrors, reflecting not the figure he wanted to project, but the absence of what he could never possess. The revelation was silent and relentless. The impostor realized he was not seen the way he wanted to be seen. He occupied the space, but he did not fill the gap of the presence he tried to replace. He could be there, but he was not recognized. He could imitate, but he could not carry the truth that vibrated in the air when the true chosen one was present. And then, what he did not foresee happened. The void he carried became evident, not because someone exposed him, not because he made an obvious mistake, but because his own absence of essence became impossible to ignore. The impostor tried to resist the fall, but what he did not understand was that his defeat did not come from a confrontation, but from the very fabric of reality. When one tries to occupy a space shaped for another, everything around rejects that presence like an organism expelling a foreign body. The respect he demanded could not be granted, because respect is not imposed. It is naturally given to those who carry real weight. Those truly worthy of reverence never need to ask for it. And that was something he never understood. There was no need for words. No argument was made. No accusation was necessary. The truth itself manifested as an invisible force, dissolving the illusion like mist under the rising sun. The impostor, who thought he was in control of the narrative, realized too late that he was not the author of this story, but merely a fleeting character whose role was to confirm, through his failure, what had always been undeniable. The identity of the chosen one cannot be falsified. The identity of a chosen one cannot be copied, for it is not about appearance or well-rehearsed words. There is an invisible weight, an energetic signature that precedes your arrival and commands respect. Even before your voice echoes, the impostor, believing he could take this place, did not understand that some truths cannot be transferred or faked. He tried to wear what can only be carried by those who were shaped for it, but essence cannot be falsified. Those who tried to usurp this presence discovered in the worst way that destiny rejects what does not belong to it. In the moment, the impostor thought he had assumed your place. Something began to crumble. He spoke, but his words carried no power. He moved, but he could not influence. Those around him felt something different, an absence that could not be explained but weighed heavily in the air. He believed he could convince them through image, but truth cannot be determined by what is seen. The presence of a chosen one does not depend on what is external, but on the force that vibrates in the invisible and marks the difference between the real and the illusion. True authority is not imposed with force, but manifests naturally. Sat, impostor expected people to bow to him, but respect cannot be demanded. It is only recognized. Those he tried to deceive realized that, despite the resemblance, he lacked something essential. They could not feel what a chosen one carries, and the absence of that force became evident. There was no need for explanations or arguments. The impostor fell under the weight of what he did not possess, defeated by the truth that could not be simulated. The lie crumbled like a sandcastle before the tide. He realized he was not seen as he wished, that his presence did not occupy the space as he had imagined. He tried to insist, to reaffirm his position, but the more he spoke, the more his absence became evident. Those who might have hesitated before began to see the obvious. He was there, but he was not who he was supposed to be. Silence was his sentence, and certainty was felt before anyone even had to speak. Destiny does not recognize forgeries. He fell, not because he was attacked, but because he had never truly stood. The attempt to occupy a place that did not belong to him proved to be a fatal mistake. Everything he did to deceive crumbled under the weight of truth. He realized, too, late, that it was not the appearance that mattered, but the spirit behind it. His greatest mistake was believing he could carry a burden that was not shaped for him. And so, without a fight, without confrontation, he was consumed by the void of what he had tried to forge. The impostor's illusion dissolved like mist at dawn. He thought he could sustain himself through image, that copying gestures and words would be enough to claim a destiny that was not his. But the identity of a chosen one cannot be reduced to appearance or behavior, for there is something beyond, the visible, that sustains their presence. The respect he demanded could not be granted, because respect is not imposed. It is naturally directed toward those who carry the true weight of the calling. The impostor tried to fill the space with a farce, but the real presence of a chosen one cannot be replaced. The more he insisted on asserting himself, the more evident the void around him became. He did not realize that those around him had already sensed his absence, even as they looked directly at him. The spirit recognizes what is true and rejects what is artificial without the need for proof or explanation. The chosen ones are not recognized solely by their words or actions, but by the energy they carry, the invisible force that precedes them. He tried to walk like you, but each step was a faint echo of your true presence. He tried to speak like you, but his voice lacked the weight that belongs only to those who carry truth within them. And when the moment came, he not only failed to deceive, he exposed his own fraud. At first, the impostor still tried to maintain the illusion, but the invisible resistance of destiny itself began to wear him down. He saw that his presence was not felt as it should be, that his voice had no impact, that his words left no mark. He realized, in a cruel and irreversible way, that he was incapable of sustaining what he had tried to steal. A chosen one is not merely someone who speaks well or acts with conviction, but someone whose essence shapes the reality around them. The impostor did not have that power, and so, even though he was there, he could never occupy the space of the true one. The rejection was not imposed by words, but by his own inability to be who he claimed to be. The silence around him grew heavier than any accusation. He did not fall because he was directly exposed, but because his own presence could not bear the weight of his lie. The void within him became impossible to ignore. The world around him began to adjust to expose him, not through attacks or confrontations, but through the simple manifestation of truth. Those who watched him did not need to argue or question, they simply knew. The impostor believed he could maintain his position with firmness, but, without realizing it, he was already slipping into the abyss of his own illusion. What he thought would be a throne became a ruin. The recognition of the true chosen one was inevitable. Without needing to assert himself, without needing to demand, without needing to fight, reality began to reorganize itself around him to reaffirm his unshakable position. The identity of a chosen one is not defined by external approval, but by the impact they generate in every gaze, every breath, every soul that crosses their path. As the impostor crumbled, your true presence became even more evident, a contrast impossible to ignore. The respect, once questioned, was reaffirmed. The reverence, once confused, found its true destination. And in the end, the one who tried to take your place became nothing more than a pale shadow of the truth that could never be erased. The identity of a chosen one is not based on titles or external validation, but on the essence that the universe recognizes without the need for proof. The impostor believed he could deceive, but he ignored that there is a greater force that sustains those who have been called to something grand. Destiny does not need introductions, for its presence is felt even before it is announced. The attempt to occupy a sacred space resulted in his own ruin, for he could never bear the weight of a legacy that did not belong to him. And so, without the need for resistance, the truth made itself known and undid the illusion, leaving only the silence of the impostor's defeat. There was no need for words, explanations, or justifications. The environment itself adjusted to reaffirm the truth. For where there is light, shadows cannot remain. The impostor expected his presence to be accepted, but gradually, he realized he was rejected by the very flow of reality. His mistake was not only trying to deceive, but believing he could wear a crown without paying the necessary price. The royalty of a chosen one is not sustained by appearance, but by spirit, and he could never replicate something forged in the fire of experience, pain, and transformation. Faced with this understanding, all that remained for the impostor was to acknowledge that he could never be what he tried to imitate. Those who witnessed the event felt the magnitude of what had happened. Without needing to say anything, each one understood that they were in the presence of something greater than could be explained. The impostor presented himself expecting to be received as a king, but he discovered that a stolen crown weighs more than can be borne. Reverence does not come through force, nor through fear, but through the recognition of what is undeniable. And in that moment, the presence of the chosen one manifested, not because it needed to reclaim its place, but because its energy had already done so long before anyone realized. The impostor fell not because he was attacked, but because the universe does not allow lies to sustain thrones that belong to others. The farce came to an end, and with it, any doubt about who truly deserved to occupy that space was dispelled. It was not a battle of words or a clash of strength. It was the truth itself that became so evident that no lie could remain. Authority was not imposed, but felt. Presence was not demanded, but recognized. The impostor, who believed he had triumphed, realized that all he had achieved was nothing more than an illusion destined to dissolve. And as he tried to understand his fall, the chosen one remained standing, untouched, unshaken, reaffirmed by the very course of events. And so, without needing to lift a finger, the one who was true remained, and the one who tried to usurp faded into irrelevance. The great irony was that, in trying to steal what he could not possess, the impostor only further reinforced the presence of the true chosen one. What he tried to erase shone even brighter, and what he tried to take slipped through his fingers like sand. Destiny cannot be forced, and those who try to usurp what does not belong to them are always destroyed by the weight of their own farce. The impostor could have walked another path, built his own trajectory, found his own truth, but in trying to wear an identity that did not belong to him, he ended up completely lost in what he could never be. The true chosen one remained where he had always been, for he never needed to fight for what was already his. He did not need to reclaim anything, for reality itself took care of reaffirming his position. The presence of a chosen one does not need to be announced, for it is felt long before any words are spoken. And in that moment, it became clear to all who were there that the reverence they had shown was not merely a response to what they saw, but to what they felt in the deepest part of their souls. The impostor may have spoken eloquently, may have repeated powerful phrases, may have tried to convince everyone of his legitimacy, but in the end, it all came down to one simple truth. He never was, he never could be, he never would be. When Hui Tianth, the farce dissolved, there was no fanfare, no commotion, no spectacle. The impostor simply became irrelevant. The once attentive gazes now turned away. The once curious voices now fell silent. And the respect he so desperately sought turned to the one who truly deserved it. The truth did not need to be spoken. It was felt. And when truth asserts itself, no argument can combat it. The one who tried to deceive saw his presence vanish, as if it had never existed. For what is not true leaves no marks, builds no legacy, does not endure. Only what carries substance can withstand time, and time always works in favor of what is real. In the end, everything returned to its rightful place. The chosen one remained effortlessly unshaken. The impostor disappeared, without a fight, without glory. And so, as it has always been and always will be, the truth prevailed, for what is real can never be erased. And as those who were there bowed, not out of obligation, but out of recognition, the story concluded in the only way possible, with the reaffirmation that a chosen one can never be replaced. Chosen one, you did not come this far by chance. What was revealed to you today is a calling to something much greater. God is restoring your energy, reversing time, and preparing your path. Now, it is up to you to accept this truth and walk with confidence. Your presence was marked to be a living testimony of the impossible. Nothing can hold you back any longer. If this message resonated within you, leave your like right now, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to continue receiving revelations that will transform your journey. Share this video with others who need to hear this message, and don't forget to leave the number 777 in the comments as a seal of confirmation of this transformation in your life. And before you go, don't miss the next video, appearing on your screen right now. It will bring even more revelations about the awakening of the chosen ones. Click and continue your journey toward the extraordinary. We'll see you there, and may God always illuminate your path.